spread around the country. Thank you. Thank you very much. Tonight, I would like to begin my remarks by doing something that I very rarely have an opportunity to do. And that is to say, from the very bottom of my heart, that I am as grateful as I possibly can be for the support that you have given me and my administration during the last 4 years. I am grateful for your knocking on doors and distributing literature in freezing cold weather, for your running for office yourselves and knocking on the doors there, and for manning the telephones, for your volunteer efforts in planting trees around the city so that our city is becoming alive with green, for your coaching little kids in the Old North End in baseball so that they're now proud to wear uniforms that they never had before, for your providing self-defense classes for women, which were extremely successful and popular, for your providing cultural activities for our senior citizens, for shoveling the snow off the walks of our handicapped people, and for most important, fighting in a wide variety of ways, each in our own different way, for peace in this world and for economic justice for all people. Tonight, I also want to do something that I rarely have the opportunity to do because we just don't get together so often. And I want to give a special thanks to a group of people who often don't get the credit that they deserve. And these are our aldermen who week after week come to this room and week after week go through vicious, ugly meetings for all of $10 a week. And they fight week after week, year after year, the good fight and the right fight for the people of Burlington. I also want to thank the members of my administration who day after day, hour after hour, put in those weeks of 50, 60, and sometimes 70 hours to protect the interests of the people. But she's back. Sometimes, in the midst of all the squabbling and political fights which go on in this city, some of which, in fact, are extremely bitter and vulgar and knock something out of you, that in the midst of the enormous opposition that we deal with every day, and in fact, in the midst of our own concentration on this or that particular issue that we are dealing with, sometimes we lose sight of one very important fact. In the United States today, there are thousands and thousands of cities and towns. To the best of my knowledge, there is only one city in this nation where independent-minded people who are concerned about peace and social justice, about the economic rights of workers and the poor. There is one city in America where people have taken on the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, big business, the local newspaper, and the whole damn establishment, and we beat them. Kids' textbook 10 years from now, there will be a footnote when they talk about the two-party system, and they're going to have an asterisk and say, except for Burlington, Vermont. We have made history, and I have a very strong feeling that in the years to come, we are going to continue to make history as the most progressive city in America. And where I believe perhaps we should be going in the years to come. And I also want to discuss perhaps very briefly why the opposition to us is as bitter and in some cases as irrational as it is. The beliefs that we hold, the dreams and visions that motivate us, those of us in this room and many more not in this room, are not new. They are not ideas that we have discovered. If civilization means anything, it means that the values that we in this room tonight share and hold in common bond are values that have been passed on from generation to generation for thousands of years and exist in one form or another in all nations and in all cultures and have been articulated 1,000,000 times by men and women in every corner of this earth. These are the values that cry out for human love and compassion, for brotherhood and sisterhood, and for a world in which every man and every woman is capable of feeling the pain and joy of his brother and his sister, and the anguish of starving children in Africa, thousands of miles from Burlington. And what are some of these values? These simple, simple beliefs, because in fact the deepest truths in life are not complicated. They are very simple. What are these values that we share together and with people throughout the entire world? First and foremost, I believe, is the desire for world peace and an end to the horror and insanity of war. What a strange and remarkable world we live in. Technology that allows for space travel, for organ transplants, for computers that talk and sing and dance. And all the while, the nations of this earth spend close to $1 trillion a year on the military for weapons of destruction and death. And the children in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America die of starvation. And the elderly people of Burlington, Vermont live in mortal fear that the President of the United States will cut their Medicare or their Medicaid or those meager Social Security cost of living checks that they get. Recently, as some of you may have read, the University of Vermont hockey team played host to a hockey team from the Soviet Union. And the American hockey players were heard to say that the young men from the Soviet Union were pretty much like them, except they were a little better at hockey. And I suspect that the UVM fellows were right. And also that the mothers in the Soviet Union are like mothers in Burlington, Vermont. And the babies in the Soviet Union are like some of the babies in this room. And the men and women who work in the factories of the Soviet Union are like our factory workers here in the United States. And yet, we are destroying the economy of the United States, and the Soviet Union is destroying their economy by spending hundreds of billions of dollars so that we can wipe each other's nation off the face of the earth. Total and absolute insanity that has to be dealt with if we are to survive. Democrats and Republicans have criticized the Progressive Coalition for speaking out on the issues of war and peace and on international issues in general. Well, so long as the President and the Congress of the United States are prepared to spend close to $300 billion a year on the military, while they contemplate cuts in Medicaid, medical care, child nutrition programs, housing, education, federal revenue sharing, and community development block grants for cities. So long as they adopt that attitude, I and the other members of the Progressive Coalition and you will speak out loudly and clearly to stop these absurd priorities. The world today, as you know, tragically hovers on the edge of nuclear annihilation. Our critics here in Burlington and in our local newspaper believe that we should leave the issue of war and peace to the geniuses in Washington and the State Department and the CIA who have served us so well over the years. But I think we understand something now. What we understand is that our friends in Washington and all of our friends here in Burlington who tell us these are not local issues, don't get involved. I think that our friends in Washington understand something. And what they understand is that they are scared to death to hear from the people back home. They are scared to death to hear from the people in the cities and towns throughout America who are saying, stop the war effort, stop the military machine. We want decent education for our kids and decent pay for our teachers. We want affordable health care, affordable housing, affordable utility rates, and we don't want MX missiles and Star Wars military machines up there. And just because the people in Washington don't want to hear from the people back home, we're going to let them know we're here, and we're going to continue to raise our voice until they stop. And then there's another value, a vision, that I believe all of the people in this room and thousands not in this room in the city of Burlington share and hold dearly. And this is a vision and a feeling that has been held for thousands of years again throughout the world by all kinds of people in all kinds of different ways. And that feeling and that belief is simply economic and social justice for all people. A very, very simple concept. It is a belief that says there is something very wrong and very immoral when a tiny handful of very wealthy people who sit at the heads of the giant banks and corporations are able to control the economic destiny of this nation and much of the world. Will they be making their investments in Vermont and create jobs here? Or will they move their factories to Haiti or El Salvador, where they can pay starving workers $3 a day to do slave labor? Will they develop a new ski resort in the southern part of Vermont, or will they go to Colorado? And which state will give them cheaper labor and a bigger tax break? Tune in tomorrow. when we talk about economic justice, we shouldn't just concentrate on the corporations and the wealthy. We should focus for a moment on the lives of ordinary people. The people who day after day, year after year, go to work. They keep the factories going, and the shops going, and the universities going, and the quote-unquote non-profit institutions going. And after 20 years of labor, they find themselves continuing to have difficulty to pay the mortgage, or the utility bills, or get their car inspected so they can stay on the road, or pay the highly inflated health insurance costs that we have to deal with. Year after year, they work, and they end up with very little. And then they have the joy of watching the President of the United States and the United States Congress cut away at programs that might, just might, provide the smallest degree of dignity in their retirement. Economic justice does not exist in this country. It does not exist in this world. And the fight someday for our kids, or for our kids' kids, to bring economic justice to this world must remain foremost in our struggles. Here in Burlington, Vermont, we are one small city in one small state in the northeastern part of the United States. What should we, one small city, attempt to do? What can we do as a city government? Well, some of the answers, I think, are quite obvious. For a start, as part of our policy of running city government, we are obliged to treat the taxpayers' money as it were our own. We are obliged to run city government as efficiently, productively, and cost-effectively as we possibly can. Waste in government benefits nobody, and I think we're doing a good job with the trust of the people's money. Secondly, we must make certain that the infrastructure of our city is maintained in as good a condition as we can afford, which is why we are very proud that in the last year and a half we have begun a street and sidewalk repaving program, so that now your cars will not totally disappear in some pothole, and that we hope within 6 or 7 years that the streets and sidewalks will be in presentable condition. And also, why we are proud that this year we are beginning the effort to improve our sewer system and our wastewater plants, and will do away with the indignity in the city of people in Burlington having human waste in their basements. We will end that once and for all. Has brought about during the last year and a half. CEDO has brought many, many millions of federal dollars into the city, and as a result of their work, hundreds upon hundreds of new jobs have been created. Today, for a variety of reasons, including the efforts of city government, unemployment in Burlington, Vermont is the second lowest in the United States of America. And while we must absolutely continue our efforts to fight for more jobs, and most importantly, higher paying jobs, for our workers, especially for women, and while we must concentrate on bringing in more jobs for the young people as well, we believe that we are off to a good start. And we passed the proposal of 5 years ago of a high-rise condominiums that we could all afford for a mere $250,000 apiece. Today, in my view, we are looking at one of the most exciting waterfront development projects in America, a project which consists, if successfully implemented, ample park space, pedestrian walkway, free museums for our kids and for ourselves, an arts and crafts center, community boating where you can go downtown and for a few bucks rent a paddle boat or a canoe. We are doing an excellent job in rehabilitating dozens and dozens of old units and making them livable for low and moderate income families. And our public health and safety department is vigorously continuing the effort of making sure that every unit of housing in the city of Burlington is up to code. A city, however, and I think we must understand this deeply, is not just bricks and mortar and streets and sewers, as important as those things are. A city is human beings, it is community, it is a spirit in the air, it is extended family, it is compassion. After all is said and done, all of us will remember for all of our lives that we lived in Burlington, Vermont in the 1980s, and we relate to each other, and the quality of our lives are affected by who we are and our relationship to each other. And to the degree that we can make this a great and beautiful city, we make our own lives greater and more beautiful. And that's the goal that we have got to have. During the last 4 years, I honestly believe that this city has done more than any city government in Vermont history to protect the needs and interests of low-income and working people. Today, in Burlington, we have a beautiful new daycare center. And that daycare center took 2 years of bitter political struggle to bring about, and today it's a beauty and we're proud of it. Today we have an emergency shelter, so that on a night like tonight, people at least have a place to sleep and a place in which to keep warm. Today in Burlington, Vermont, we have a shelter for battered women, which is doing an excellent job in dealing with that difficult problem. Today in Burlington, we have fine after-school programs for our children, an excellent employment program for unemployed youth, and a wonderful youth newspaper, which combines the efforts of 6 different schools, and the kids produce the newspaper themselves. Today in Burlington, Vermont, the arts and cultural activities are alive and well for people of all economic levels, not just the well-to-do who can afford the 20 bucks for a nice concert or a play. Next summer, if you can believe it, we will be opening our 5th annual Battery Park free summer concert series, and we will continue our jazz festivals, country music festivals, winter festivals, senior citizen art programs, neighborhood festivals, and our sponsorship for dozens and dozens of a variety of cultural activities. Also, it is my belief that the Vermont Reds will once again win the Eastern League Championship. And I hope we'll all get together in the baseball game this summer. During the last several years, in a manner unprecedented in modern Vermont, the city of Burlington has stood up and fought the special interests and the big money, battle after battle. Sometimes we lose. Sometimes we win. But they know we are here. And they know that they don't run the city anymore. During the last several years, we have opposed the outrageous 48% increase in rates sought by our friendly New England telephone company. We have opposed Cox Cable Television's request for a mere 90% increase in rates and a 15-year franchise in the city without competition. And I always love that particular one. The great exponents of the free enterprise system and capitalism who believe that they have a right for monopoly without competition. We oppose the rights of private utilities to dig up our streets and sidewalks with impunity and to leave the bill for the taxpayers. And we are very delighted that our friends in Winooski have joined us and that they are now going to put the excavation fee on their election day and fight for that. We're delighted. insurance rates, which are especially disastrous for the elderly. We opposed the local insurance company's monopoly in the city, which provided at an inflated cost insurance for the city. And we are very proud that a consultant hired by the city was able to work with our light department to develop a new rate structure, which we believe will offer substantial savings to the residential consumers of the city. The rest of my page is blank, so I'm going to have to wing it from here in conclusion. But I think I just want to say this. Yesterday was Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthday. And we declared the day Martin Luther King Day in Burlington. You didn't see it because I don't think it got into the paper, but we did. And we wrote a statement about it. And I think it's fitting maybe to summarize what we wrote to conclude maybe where we are in Burlington today and where we're going to go. King was clearly a very great man, and as a result of his work and the work of thousands of other people in the civil rights movement, clearly enormous changes took place in this country. Some of us who are older than others can remember, unbelievable as it may seem to the younger people, that not so long ago in this quote-unquote free country, black people could not sit in the front of buses, could not use restrooms that were reserved for whites only, could not go to white schools, things that the young people, in fact, have a very hard time to believe. They have a hard time believing as they see the all-black University of Alabama basketball team win the national championship. But clearly things have changed significantly for black people in this country because of King and many others. But as all of the corporations pay their homage to King now and so forth and so on, but most of us may remember that much of what he attempted to accomplish has, of course, not happened. Integration certainly exists far more than it did before. But when King, as you may recall, stood out and fought against the Vietnam War and militarization, and the military establishment keeps rolling along, and King urged black and white workers to stand together for social justice, and that hasn't happened. And King was a man of nonviolence and human dignity, and the gap between the rich and poor that King deplored 20 years ago is in fact wider today. His dream may be half filled. And I think maybe to conclude these remarks is to say that we have a dual mission in front of us. On one hand, we have the obligation of doing the very best we can to make this city and this city government as great as it can be. But on the other hand, we have got to go into our hearts and into our guts and to rekindle a vision of human dignity, of the kind of society that every person in this room knows can exist. It's not going to happen now. But we have got to hold on to that vision, because if they take away that vision of a new world and a decent society, then everything is lost. And maybe to quote Martin Luther King in the civil rights movement, I do believe we shall overcome. Thank you.
It is